What's up, guys, and welcome back to MoAn Inc. If you guys are new here, then hello! My name is Erica, and it is a pleasure to have you joining me today on the channel. Because for today's video, as you can see from the title, we are going to be chatting about and summarizing Lysistrata by Aristophanes. But before we can get into that, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you know every single time I post in the future. And now that you've so kindly done that, let's get into the video. The play opens on a neighborhood street in Athens. Now, it's just after dawn, and technically what we can see is this central building behind, like in the back of the stage, right? So the stage is the street, and then behind it is the building. I don't know why I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be. But on that building, there are 3 doors. So we've got the central large door, and then we have 2 flanking doors on either side. Now, we then have our main character walk out of one of these 3 doors. It's actually not specified in the text, so I assume that you can have her walk out of any door. Regardless of which door she emerges from, Lysistrata shows up, she opens the door, she comes out, and she looks up and down the street expectantly. I do want to make a little bit of a note here, because in one of my other videos, I said that all of Aristophanes' plays were named after the chorus, and this is like the one exception to that. Every other play, pretty much, the Wasps, Clouds, Knights, all named after the chorus, but this one is named after our main character, who is the first person who steps on stage. After a beat of being there by herself, she is then met by her neighbor, who's a woman called Kalonike. Now, Kalonike shows up, and she basically opens the play by asking Lysistrata why she looks so annoyed. Lysistrata explains that this is because she has asked all the women to meet at a certain time, and it is obviously just the 2 of them. So she's pretty annoyed that everybody's late to this, in particular because she has been thinking for so long, so hard about what she wants to present to the women, which is a solution to the cultural problems that are happening. Now, we'll get into detail about that in a hot second, but basically she realizes that salvation of Greece and to prevent the annihilation of different peoples throughout Greece, it is down to the women, which is why she called all of them there this morning, and they're late. What is that about? Finally, though, after a long back and forth between the pair where they're kind of talking about like women's stereotypes and how this is literally the stereotype of women, that they can't stick to a time schedule and all this kind of stuff. And so Lysistrata's kind of like, why are we feeding into this? Shouldn't we be actively trying to do more to get rid of these stereotypes? Like, what is going on? But after this, a number of women enter the stage to meet and to chit-chat with Lysistrata, since she's called them all there. The first woman to come up to Lysistrata is a woman named Myrene, I think. Now, the reason why I say I think is because when I was taught Lysistrata, that is how my teacher pronounced it. I say this a lot in videos. There are lots of names that I know I pronounce in possibly a bizarre way, possibly the wrong way, but it's because they've been ingrained in me since I was like a teenager. Anyways, she is the first woman to go up to Lysistrata, and she essentially, she doesn't apologize, but she says, I hope we're not too late. Can we still talk even though we didn't arrive on time? And Lysistrata hilariously actually kind of grills into her and starts like kind of making fun of like, oh, well, you know, I don't have a medal for who shows up last, so it's fine. And my reading is like, look, lady, I didn't do this on purpose, but I couldn't find my girdle to put on to come here. It's better that I showed up late and ready than on time and looking like a slob, which honestly, agreed. Lysistrata replies and says that she will get into it as soon as some other women from different areas of Greece show up, in particular Sparta. So they, wait for like a beat until Myrene turns to the side of the stage and she's like, oh, that's really convenient. There they are a-comin'. On stage walks Lampito along with a Theban woman and a Corinthian woman. Okay, so we are now gathering women from all different areas of Greece to have a very serious conversation about the salvation of people. But unlike what happened with Myrene like 5 seconds ago, Lysistrata does nothing but shower these women when they show up with compliments, right? She is just like the ultimate fangirl. You can imagine Myrene on stage is like, is this a fucking joke? I mean, she has to stand there and listen to Lysistrata being like, oh, Lampito, your beauty is dazzling. Your cheeks are so rosy. Oh, in your physical form, I mean, you have the body of a runner. She doesn't specifically say that last part. She actually says that her physique is very firm, but still, she insinuates that she clearly works out, is what I was trying to get at. But it's not only Lysistrata who showers them in compliments, that even Kalonike, the original neighbor who showed up, she chimes in, saying that Lampito has great boobs, apparently, right? Like, she's also showering them with all of these compliments. Lampito thanks them, introduces the other women on stage, and then the attention is back on Lysistrata, who says that now is the time, since everybody has gathered, for her to tell them her plan. However, before she gets into the detail, she wants the women to go on this, thought process with her. So she opens with a couple of questions. Quite literally, two. The first thing that she puts forward is that she asks if the women are missing the fathers of their children because all of these men are off at war. Now, this is a bit of context because you guys know that I don't really like to do a lot of context when it comes to comedy because we will be here all day if I constantly stop to give you cultural context. That this is where we open up about the Peloponnesian War and we hear a bit more about it and what has been occupying the men. So if you don't know about the Peloponnesian War, I have discussed the Peloponnesian War on the channel like a load of times. So I'll link all of those videos in the description below in case you want those. But also there are so many like quick and easy articles to read just to kind of catch you up because that's when this is set. Okay, so all of the men, all of the fathers of these, women's children's are off at war fighting. And that is why Lysistrata opens with this question, because she says, don't you miss your husbands? Don't you miss the fathers of your children? Don't you miss having them around? And it's really funny because actually Kalonike replies and she says, yeah. I mean, like, we miss our husbands. That's really sad. But it's not just the fact that our husbands and the father of our children are gone. It's also the fact that all of the men who could have just been lovers to us in the interim are also gone fighting this war. Like, what are we supposed to do? And the second question that she poses is, if Lysistrata could solve this problem, right? If she could come to them with a problem that would bring their husbands back and end the war, and the lovers, obviously, for Kalonike's preference. But if she could do that, if she had a solution, would they be interested in hearing it? And obviously all of the women are very, very keen to hear what Lysistrata has come up with. All of the women are chiming in and they're saying things like, we'll do anything you want us to, like anything to end this war. We're ready to put everything on the line. This has got to stop. They're really like getting into it and showing how prepared they are to make whatever sacrifice necessary until Lysistrata is like, right, so the plan is that if we just stop having sex with all of the men, then they'll have to end the war, okay? Like, this is what we're gonna do. We are going to go celibate as a team, all of us together, and the men will get so frustrated, it will force them into ending the war. In response to this, despite what the women were saying before, they literally stop, turn their backs on Lysistrata, and start to walk away, right? 1 second they are willing to do anything if the idea was something along the lines of like, we have a negotiation, we could go in there and fight, we could do X, Y, and Z. That is what they were fine with, right? They were very happy to make the sacrifice. But the whole celibacy thing, they're like, no, absolutely not for me. Now, not only do they have like a general sort of walkout happening, but we also have Kalonike literally throw over her shoulder to Lysistrata and she says, yeah, count me out, let the war drag on. And Myrene then echoes this, so like eggs Kalonike on, to which then Kalonike adds and says that she would literally walk through fire to end the war, but will not do the one thing that Lysistrata has suggested. Now, even though it is looking quite bleak for Lysistrata, we do have Lampito who stands up and she says that she'll do it. She says, if nobody else will, I actually think this is a really effective, easy plan that we can implement and that every single person can implement. Like, yes, I'll do this with you if nobody else will. Kalonike then asks if Lysistrata is really sure that peace will come from this plan, because if she's certain, then she's kind of like, Kalonike is sort of willing to hear her out a little bit more. And so Lysistrata says, absolutely, by the two goddesses. If we sat around at home all made up and walked past them wearing only our see-through underwear and with our word redacted, because I'm pretty sure that YouTube won't let me say that. To be fair, I've said sex like a bunch of times. I'm gonna have to bleep that word out as well. But anyways, plucked in a neat triangle and our husbands got... I don't think I can say most of this. But we didn't go near them and kept away, they'd sue for peace. And pretty quick, you can count on that. Kalonike then essentially becomes devil's advocate, and she asks Lysistrata what they should do if the men actually try and drag them to go and hook up, right? So if the men come and forcefully pull them into the bedroom, what are they supposed to do? Are they just supposed to keep saying no because the men aren't going to listen to them? And Lysistrata in response is like, don't worry, just hold the door as you're going through the door frame. Don't know how effective that would be, but okay. And then Kalonike asks what they should do if the men, in response to that, try to beat them up. Like, holy fuck, this got dark so quickly. And Lysistrata's response to this is, well, in that case, you're going to have to submit, obviously, because you can't fight off your husband. But just make sure that you're not being pleasured and like you're not having a good time, because men can't get off if you're not having a good time. Like, what? And the worst part is that they all just kind of gloss over this. Like, no one makes a reference to that whatsoever. We never speak about that again. We never talk more in depth about that. It's just like, take notes, everybody. This is Lysistrata's advice. Okay. Lampito is then the only person to bring up a more real world problem, shall we say, which is that she says that even if they become celibate, they stay away from their husbands, no matter what they do, the issue is that there is still money to be spent on war. And if there's still money to be spent on war, it actually doesn't matter what they do, because the men will continue to spend the money and continue to fund the war. However, Lysistrata has already thought of this. Right, so she tells everyone that in the meantime, as they've been talking, she's actually sent up a bunch of older women to go and occupy the Acropolis of Athens. Because that's where the treasury is kept. If you don't know this about the ancient world, you kind of do need to know this for this play. That is where all the money is, okay? It is kept safely on the Acropolis. And so essentially, Lysistrata has sent all these women up to pretend and to fake as if they're going to do a sacrifice. They need to be alone up there. They need to be honoring the goddess, all this kind of stuff. And actually what they're going to do is that all of the other women who are down here, when they agree, they're all going to go up and occupy the Acropolis. So that way, no one can get to the money. So not only are they going to be celibate, but they are also having like a lock-in on the Acropolis, okay? Okay. Lampito says that this is great news. She's very happy to do this. And therefore, Lysistrata has everybody swear an oath. So they have this whole big like wine moment. There's a shield involved. It is actually very funny when you read the text, but we don't need it for the purpose of a summary. The point that you need to know is that everybody makes a verbal binding oath, and then they drink wine to like solidify that they have all agreed this is the plan. Once they've done this, though, Lampito is told by Lysistrata to go back to Sparta and to organize all of the women there to do as well what they've done, right? So not only are the Athenian women going to be celibate, they're going to be like, absolutely not, stay away from me, but so are the Spartan women on that side as well. So Lampito leaves, but she leaves the two women that she's come with in Athens. So she goes off by herself to go back to Sparta to organize that. Lysistrata then leaves with all of the other women on stage. They go through the door, and she basically, as they're leaving, says that they're going to go up to the Acropolis now, and they're going to go and just sit. Now that the stage is bare, we have the introduction of one of two semi-choruses that show up. So the first semi-chorus that we meet are a group of men. The second semi-chorus will be a group of women, but we'll come to them in a second. And also bear in mind that obviously everybody on stage would have been a man. Maybe not obviously if you're not used to ancient theatre, but all of these people, regardless of gender, they are all men. Either they're dressed up as men or they are dressed up as women. Anywho, the first semi-chorus shows up, and this is 12 older men. They are described as not being dressed very well, right? Not in like rags, but just not very well dressed. And all of them are holding logs as well as like a bucket of coal. Some of them have torches that are like on fire. And we hear from the chorus leader that the plan is, since they've heard that the women are on the Acropolis, which they are completely shocked by, mind you, since that's the case, their big grand plan is to go up there with all of the logs, place the logs down on the ground, create a pyre, and any woman who won't... Why is the first word that came to mind disembark? English is my only language. I do want to make this clear. However, the word that I really meant was leave, right? Any woman who doesn't leave the Acropolis, I guess you can say no, you can't say disembark there. Not the point. So anyone who doesn't come off the Acropolis when the men ask, they've decided that they're just going to like collectively throw her on the pyre. That's the big plan. And as the men walk up to, the Acropolis, we have the chorus leader who eventually stops them, tells them to start putting the logs down. So we know that this plan is, happening. Puts the logs down, has a couple of them with the torches come closer, a couple of them with the coals. And by the way, all the members of the chorus even, they have moments of being like, the coals are really hot. So these aren't like tough men. These aren't the men who are like in battle. These are the ones who are left behind. And as they're getting all of this ready to then essentially knock on the door of the Acropolis and be like, hey, ladies, cut it out. We then have the introduction of the second semi-chorus, which, like I said, are women. So these are 12 women and they are much better dressed than the first chorus. They are older women, but they're carrying pitchers, right? Like the jugs of water. We have a little bit of an awkward moment where as the women are walking with their pitchers of water, they can see the male chorus and they're kind of like, are those men? Like, what are they doing here? And then the men turn around at the sound of their voice and they're like, well, we didn't think that we would see women outside of the Acropolis. We didn't count for this. Which causes then the start of an awkward conversation, but then the leaders of both choruses end up talking smack to each other. For example, the men's leader says to the women's leader of that chorus, if you don't shut up, I'll knock you right out of your old hide. And the women's leader replies, come over here and just touch Stratellis with the tip of your finger. To which the men's leader says, what if I give you the 1-2 punch? Got anything scary to counter with? And the women's leader says, I'll rip out your lungs and your guts with my fangs. I mean, the smack talk is pretty good, okay? You guys know that I don't think a lot of ancient smack talk is good. For the most part, I'm like, this is cringy, stop talking. But the two of them, 10 out of 10. So the men, with their now lit torches, some of the wood has been like lit in the coals, and so every single man has a torch, they start advancing on the women. But obviously the women have these pitchers of water each. And so therefore when the men get close to them as if they're threatening, which like, what are you gonna do? Set their hair on fire? I mean, calm down, senors. So they advance and obviously the women holding their water just like toss it out on the men. They're like, no. And then we just end the scene. That is the end of the fight between them for now. Just because the scene ended doesn't mean that these semi-choruses leave the stage. They're still on stage, they're just interrupted by a magistrate that walks on. And the magistrate shows up with a couple of slaves as well as 4 Scythian policemen. Okay, so when he walks on, he sort of opens up by saying, I've seen women do this before. To which the leader of the men's chorus replies, if you think those women on the Acropolis are bad, you've got to see what these women just did to us. And he explains the whole water pitcher situation, right? He's just like, look at us. Looks like we peed our pants. And the magistrate hilariously just kind of looks at him and he's like, honestly, you deserved that? Like, not based on what you've done, but just the fact that you've taught your women to fight back. You've taught your women to be strong. You've taught your women to do things like this. Of course they're going to do it on you. Like, don't be dumb. Again, with all of these jokes, just bear in mind the time period that it was written, the audience that it was written for. We can laugh at these things within their context, even though, obviously, they can be problematic. Not all the jokes are, some of them are, but again, just enjoy them within the context for the purpose of a summary. At some point, we'll analyze all of them. We can go through all of that in another video. Anywho, seeing the situation that all of them are in, the magistrate looks to one of his slaves and asks him to run off to go and find a crowbar so that way they can put it under the gates to the Acropolis and they can some way, somehow get the gates open. I don't know logistically how you would do that with a crowbar. I don't need the logistics of this, okay? Basically, he says, get a crowbar. We're going to put it on the gate and we're going to open the gate up. And the slave is like, aye, aye. Lysistrata has overheard this crowbar planning, right? So she comes out of the Acropolis and she says, hey, there's no need for this. I just want to talk. We don't have to like defile the Acropolis just because you want to have a word. I'm here. Let's go for it. And so as soon as she stands out, the magistrate decides that he just doesn't want to have a conversation with her and he wants her seized. So he turns to one of his 4 policemen. Now, remember I said that they were Scythian. So a big part of this joke is that they are going to look stupid because the Greeks thought that was funny, right? The Greeks thought everybody who wasn't Greek was dumb, especially the Scythians. And so they are oftentimes, as we saw in Women at the Thesmophoria, they are presented as just being like burly foreign idiots. Again, we need to bear in mind the context of when this was written and what the audience would have found funny. So that is sort of the comedic angle that we're taking with the policeman. Because when Lysistrata comes out and the magistrate says, okay, one of you go and seize her, right? One of you tie her up just that we can, figure out what to do with her because she has all the women in the Acropolis, right? This woman is a troublemaker. So he says that to the policeman. 1 of 4 decides to advance on Lysistrata. Just 1. And Lysistrata turns to him and just kind of says, I dare you. And that is enough to scare him. Okay, this man retreats. He's like, oh, actually, she's got a mouth on her. I want nothing to do with that. And when he steps back, the magistrate is kind of confused by this. So he asks the 2nd policeman to go and again to seize Lysistrata, tie her up, the exact same instructions he gave the first one. And this guy then advances by himself. However, it's not Lysistrata who threatens him this time, but a secondary, larger, older woman appears from the Acropolis and she threatens to physically harm him, even though he's a policeman, even though he's very large. But this threat is enough for him to be like, I agree with the first guy. I just don't think that we should get involved. So after being threatened to have the absolute bejesus beaten out of him, he walks back in line with the other policeman. So again, for the 3rd time, the magistrate asks the 3rd policeman to go in to handle Lysistrata. Bear in mind, he could just handle her. Okay, he could just do it if he is this big, strong magistrate, but no, he's trying to get the Scythians, and apparently this is the funny part. I think it's funny that the magistrate is such a weak guy. He won't handle this tiny Grecian woman. Like, I just picture Lysistrata, and maybe this is totally me self-imposing actually, because I'm half Mediterranean, my mother is Sicilian, and so whenever I read these things, I'm like, I'm 5'2". This bitch is like 5'4", 5'5" max. And this magistrate is like, yeah, the policeman will do my dirty work. Ha 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 ha. Like, what a weenie. So, was I at the 3rd policeman? Oh God, I hope I was at the 3rd policeman. Okay, so the 3rd policeman walks forward. We're just gonna go from the 3rd policeman. 3rd policeman walks forward. Magistrate is like, handle Lysistrata. 3rd policeman walks over. We then have a 2nd older, larger woman come out from the Acropolis. And she says, hey, if you even lay a finger, do it, lay a hand on Lysistrata, I will pull your hair and rip it out of your scalp until you scream. And that guy as well retreats back to the line of policemen. This then happens a 4th time, people. Again, how is this a joke against the policeman and not a joke against the stupid magistrate? Completely lost on me. So the 4th guy then approaches, and the same thing happens with the 3rd woman who comes out from the Acropolis. Everybody is team Lysistrata is what I'm trying to get at. And the policemen, none of them individually want to get involved with this. And so therefore the magistrate decides that he's going to order all of the policemen to attack as like one unit against Lysistrata. And so therefore, when they all start marching towards Lysistrata and the other women, Lysistrata says, I don't know if I would do that because there's 4 of you and we have how many women waiting to get into a fight back there? Oh, believe me, all I have to do is call over my shoulder and they will come a-running. So just think about that before you get any closer. The policemen are undeterred this time, so they keep walking and Lysistrata summons her ladies. Now the ladies that she summons, as I said, the chorus have not left the stage, so we use the semi-chorus of women to get involved with the policemen. And literally when they attack, the policemen are like howling and running. They are just like, whoa, what is going on? So the policemen run off, and Lysistrata hilariously orders all the women on stage to not strip the bodies. This is something, if you guys haven't watched my Iliad series, you might not be aware of. This is a big thing in war. When men fight each other in war, they will tend to get the armor from the bodies that they have killed, and then they'll kind of take it. It's that war booty kind of a thing. And so this is a very comical line. Like when I was reading the play again, I actually laughed out loud at this line. I was like, so go on, Aristophanes, we're like that. Now the women return to the Acropolis, and obviously the magistrate, who did not fight, mind you, the loser. He doesn't fight, but he is shocked that this has happened. And he turns to Lysistrata and he's like, what a calamity. That has just happened with my men. Who do you think you are? And obviously, Lysistrata is like, what the f*** did you expect? You showed up here, all guns a-blazing. Like, what did you think I was going to do? So the magistrate and the men who are left on stage, they realize that Lysistrata is very happy to just talk to them, right? She doesn't need to be seized, she doesn't need to be held or tied up or any of this dumb shit that they came into the scene thinking. She is just very happy to talk to them. And so therefore, they start to question her. So the first thing that they ask her is, what's the big grand plan now that they've occupied the Acropolis? And Lysistrata says that they want control over the money because they know that the men are going to just use it for war and for more attacks. You know, all of that kind of stuff. They're just like, we as women should be the ones to handle the money. And obviously the men in response are like, well, that's dumb. Like, why would we let women handle the money? To which Lysistrata has a fabulous response. And she's like, we already do at home. Like, we handle all of the finances at home. We handle everything within the household. Why do you think we are incapable of doing it for the city? Answer me that. The magistrate thinks he's really smart by responding, oh, well, that's different because this is war. And Lysistrata is like, there shouldn't even be a war to begin with. In response to this, the magistrate asks Lysistrata how they're supposed to protect themselves in war if not fighting then, because the war is happening. There is currently a fight. And so therefore, what are they supposed to do? And Lysistrata is like, don't worry. We've already decided how we're going to protect you. And when the magistrate pushes back against that, Lysistrata says, all along being proper women, we used to suffer in silence no matter what men did, because you wouldn't let us make a sound. But you weren't exactly all we could ask for. No. We knew only too well what you were up to, and too many times we'd hear in our homes about a bad decision you'd made on some great issue of state. Then, masking the pain in our hearts, we'd put a smile on and ask you, how did the assembly go today? Any decisions about a rider to the peace treaty? And my husband would say, what's that to you? Shut up! And I'd shut up. To which the magistrate says, if you hadn't shut up, you'd have gotten a beating. And Lysistrata replies, well, that's why I did shut up. Later on, we began to hear about even worse decisions that you'd made. And then we would ask, husband, how come you're handling this so stupidly? And right away, he'd glare at me and tell me to get back to my sewing if I didn't want major damage to my head. War shall be the business of menfolk. Unquote. Now, the reason why I read that out to you is because after that, she essentially says that if men would be willing to shut up and to listen to women in this instance, because they have greater clarity of this situation, then actually they would hear that their suggestion will solve everyone a lot of trouble. The magistrate literally says that he would rather die than shut up to Lysistrata. Like, he does not like her talking at all. He thinks that she is a Looney Tune. He thinks that she is just a woman who has been given too much freedom. She's out of control. And in response to this, Lysistrata just gets so frustrated with him that she basically starts asking what the problem is. And he keeps stressing that it's that she's a woman and she's dressed like a woman and all of this kind of stuff. And so she's like, oh, well, if my veil is a problem, because she's wearing a veil. Well, if my veil is a problem, you wear it. And so she puts the veil on him. And some of the other women who are on stage, they also start putting these like womanly items of clothing on him. And he just kind of stands there and takes it. And so by the end of this scene, he looks ridiculous. Like, they've just thrown all this stuff being like, oh, if it's a problem with what I'm wearing, why don't we just switch roles and then it shouldn't be that much of a problem. If it's to do with my clothing, you wear it and then you can listen to me. The magistrate is obviously getting more and more frustrated, and he says that the women couldn't have a sound enough problem to fix this international mess. And the reason is because women do not share the pain. They do not share the sacrifice of going into war. And this just tips Lysistrata over the edge. She's like, oh, women share none of the burdens, none of them. What about the sons that we send to war? The sons that we have birthed, the sons that we have grown in our bodies, we have to send them to war. And not only that, but women when they're young, we're supposed to be enjoying our youth. We're supposed to be with our husbands, with the man that we fell with the father of our children, and enjoying our time together. And yet, we have to grow old without them here. She goes on to say how much it pains her, the idea of the women who are growing so much older than even she is, without men coming home every single night to them. And obviously the magistrate's genius response is, oh, men grow old too. And Lysistrata is like, that is not the same thing. Because when a man comes back from war, no matter his age, no matter if he is graying, if he is older, if he's coming to even the end of his life, he can marry a younger woman. He can essentially start again. And we cannot. Is this an ancient play or a modern one? Honestly, mind-blowing that Aristophanes wrote that for a woman to say, and what makes it even more mind-boggling is that it's a man dressed up as a woman who's saying it to not only a stage full of men, but an audience full of men. I mean, whoa. Now, obviously, because this is a comedy, Aristophanes has the magistrate try to chime back in, and he starts saying, well, any man that can get her hard, and he gets interrupted by Lysistrata, who literally just turns to him and says, oh, why don't you just drop dead? Like, just make a gravesite of this place already. She then takes off her garland and she throws it at him. She tells him to use it as a makeshift wreath for his funeral. Now remember, he is covered in all of the veils and the women's sort of things that they had been throwing at him. They had all these sewing baskets. I didn't mention those, but some women had brought sewing baskets and they were like throwing things at him so that he, was dressed more like a woman, as I mentioned earlier. And so he looks like that and he's just had a wreath thrown at him. So the magistrate is like, I should just go straight to the council looking like this and just show them how crazy you all are. So the magistrate begins walking off stage and Lysistrata calls after him. Good riddance, I hope you don't complain about the funeral. We'll make sure it's really pretty. Like, what? What a boss. I know that we're constantly talking about Medea from Euripides and all of these other women that are like super, super famous. But Lysistrata deserves way more attention. She is sassy, she is quick, she is hard hitting with the facts. I mean, she's a whole vibe, honestly. And when the men exit, we then have the women exit to the Acropolis, which leaves the choruses, both semi-choruses, on stage. Long scene short between the choruses is that essentially they just start kind of like squaring each other up as if they're going to tussle. Like they start taking off items of clothing as well, being like, do you want to go outside? And the leader of the female chorus actually makes a lunge, like a grab, for the leader of the male chorus's leg to start a physical fight. And that is when, thankfully, Lysistrata walks out from the Acropolis again and interrupts what could have potentially been quite an ugly scene. When Lysistrata comes out, she is just pacing, okay? And she's pacing at such a speed that it's distracting. And the leader of the women's chorus is like, what's that all about? What's going on? And Lysistrata tells us that a huge problem is happening with the women on the Acropolis. In fact, mayhem is breaking loose. No one is getting along. Everybody has a really quick temper. And it's all because they are really, really horny. Okay? The celibacy thing is not working out. Everyone is really up in arms. They are really agitated. They are very frustrated. And Lysistrata says that it is now madness among them. Not only are they getting frustrated with one another, but the biggest problem that Lysistrata is having is that she can't keep any of the women on the Acropolis because they keep trying to escape to go and see their husbands. And she is literally saying to the chorus, they have told me every single lie in the book. to get off of the Acropolis. And no one seems to be able to hold onto the oath that we all swore because they are so distracted by the fact that they have not slept with their husbands in however long. Okay, we're not told a length of time. It clearly is not that long, but still, it is frustrating everyone that they are doing anything to try and find their men. And as she's saying this to the chorus, a woman tries to make a break for it from the Acropolis, and Lysistrata turns around and is like, hey, where are you going? To which the woman replies, I just remembered that I left my yarn out, and I don't want the moths to eat it. I have to go and pack it up. It's at home. It would be really bad if that happened. So I'm just gonna go and do that and then come back. And obviously Lysistrata is way too smart for this, and she's like, nice try. Get back inside. And as Lysistrata turns back to the chorus, a second woman tries to make a break for it from the Acropolis. And Lysistrata again is like, hey, where do you think you're going? And that woman says that apparently she left her flax out and this would be a problem. And if she doesn't, I don't even know what the flax is. I'm going to be real with you guys, but like, this is a big farming issue that she's got. And so she's like, I left the flax out. I gotta go home, put it away. And Lysistrata stresses, no, because if you go and you do that, even though I actually kind of believe your problem, but because all of us are in the same boat, if you go, everybody else is going to want to go. So no, back up to the Acropolis. And when this woman turns around, we have a third woman come out and she's got this big bulging belly. And she comes out in like this really bad fake waddle. And when Lysistrata's like, where are you going? This woman is like, I have to go and give birth. I'm about to birth this baby. I'm so sorry, Lysistrata. And Lysistrata replies and she goes, that's funny, because yesterday you weren't pregnant. And the woman's like, but I am today. So Lysistrata walks over and like knocks on the belly and we hear that it's hollow. So obviously Lysistrata is like, you're actually insane. All of this, people, let's remember, all of this is just because they have all vowed an oath of celibacy and they just can't handle it to the point where they're faking pregnancy. And this woman, when Lysistrata is like, weird, you've got a hollow belly, it seems really hard. The woman is like, yeah, that's what happens when you're pregnant with boys. And literally Lysistrata pulls the stomach out from underneath this woman's clothing, and it is just a bronze helmet. And Lysistrata's like, what the fuck were you planning on doing with this? And the woman was like, well, I am really pregnant. I am going to give birth. And my plan was that I could maybe have the baby in the helmet like a pigeon does. Yeah, that's the plan. And Lysistrata calls her and all the other women nutty. And further than that, she asks them, because obviously they miss their husbands, and she gets that. But she thinks, don't you think they miss you too? That is the most important thing. Like, you have forgotten, your eyes have been taken off the prize. You've forgotten what we're doing, and that is that we want them to crack first. Okay, they are also in just as much pain, possibly more pain. And that's the goal, people. It's working. She tries to appeal to more so the like whimsical, mythological side to the women. And she says that there has been a prophecy where if they stick together, they will be successful. So she produces a scroll that has the prophecy written out on it. You guys can read it in the play. But she reads it out loud. And then when she closes the scroll, she's like, there is your proof. It would be bad and against the gods if we didn't listen to the oracular reading that we have about this. Okay, so just be patient. For the love of God. So all of the women who are on stage turn around and they go back up to the Acropolis. So this leaves us on stage with the chorus. Now, remember how I said that they were like gonna have a tussle? They were like taking off these items of clothing. Well, now they are kind of like teasing each other, like verbally teasing each other. And all the members of the chorus, actually, they start putting their clothing back on. So I don't know where I was going with that sentence, but they start doing that. And once they are clothed, they then go towards where the orchestra part of the stage is, and they sit sort of around the orchestra looking inwards to the stage. And this is one of the funniest and most chaotic scenes. I think probably the most iconic scene from this entire play. And that is that we have sort of above the buildings that I mentioned at the back of the stage, we have this kind of like overlook. I don't know how else to describe it, but there's like a platform up there. And that is where even Lysistrata now appears. She, much like before, is pacing and she's, getting faster and faster when all of a sudden something catches her eye. And she stops and she turns and she squints. And you can see her sort of be like, ooh, interesting. We don't know what she's just seen. And instead she turns around and she calls over to the women to come up to where she is. And one of these women is Myrene from the start of the play. And when they get there, the other women get to Lysistrata. Lysistrata turns around to them and says, what do you see? Look out. What is it that you see out there? And one of them is like, I think that's a man down there. I think, isn't that a male? And Lysistrata agrees. And she asks for any more detail if they can get a closer look. And as all the women kind of lean forward, Myrene goes, holy shit, that's my husband. Lysistrata agrees, and she basically tells Myrene that now is her time to shine, okay? What Myrene has to do is she's got to go down to meet her husband and to essentially torture him with the fact that she's in front of him, but won't do anything with him until he agrees to open up peace negotiations. And remember, the oath is so that when the peace negotiations are signed, then the women will stop their sex ban, right? So Myrene is supposed to go down, talk to her husband, and convince him to open up these negotiations ASAP. And Myrene says that she'll do it. So Lysistrata says that she'll be close by just in case Myrene needs the support for what she's doing. And so the other wives, aside from Lysistrata, go back onto the Acropolis. So they exit the stage and we have Lysistrata, who is still where she is standing as Myrene goes down to meet her husband. Enter Myrene's husband to the stage. So his name is Canesius, and he comes on with a slave, and the slave is holding a baby. And this guy, when he appears, he's got, again, this is Aristophanes, this is ancient Greek comedy, so he is wearing a giant erect phallus, and he is clearly in pain. Okay, remember, nobody is having any sex, and we are supposed to see that both genders are really struggling with this. So when he comes on, he is like not comfortable. He is trying to find his wife. Clearly the man has like one goal in mind. And Canesius, before his wife appears, because Myrene will come on in a second, but as she's, making her way down from the Acropolis, Canesius kind of like talks outwardly to nobody in particular, and he starts complaining. And Lysistrata, from where she is like, oh, I hear a voice. Who is that? And Canesius replies, it's me. Just like, look down here. To which Lysistrata says, who, a man? And Canesius literally like motions towards the giant phallus, the giant fake phallus that he's wearing, and is like, yes, a man. And Lysistrata says to him, oh, in that case, please depart. It's women only. And Canesius is already like, I can't do this, woman. Like, please. So he basically tells Lysistrata that he is Myrene's husband, right? He outwardly says that. He's like, this is my wife and blah, blah. And Lysistrata is like, oh, that's so funny that you say that because she talks about you all the time and mentions how much she misses you, how strong you are. Like, literally is just like feeding into the ego side of him so that he knows that his wife has been talking nonstop about him and all of this kind of stuff. And it is working. Lysistrata, our girl, she is clever. And as Lysistrata continues doing this, Myrene's husband basically cracks at one point and he's just like, send my wife down, please. I do not want to keep talking to you. Just have her come here now. Lysistrata asks if he has anything for her because he wants this thing that's so bad. And so he actually throws a coin purse up at her and Lysistrata opens it up. She counts a bit and she's like, okay, I'll go send her down. She like walks off the Acropolis to tell Myrene, go. Now I've warmed him up for you. He's ready. Now alone on stage, Canesius has a kind of cuter moment, but also it is obviously like shadowed by the fact he has a giant fake erect phallus. And the kind of cute moment is that he says without his wife at home, he's experienced no joy and no pleasure. He misses her so much, right? It's, again, kind of cute, minus the physical obstacle is what I'm going to call that. Minus that, it would have been a sweet speech. Because he says that he feels really lonely at home, that everything feels really empty without Myrene. But all of this is because he's so horny. It has like nothing really to do with my reading. It's like he just said one sentence too many. That's something that my dad always says to me. He's like, you gotta stop talking when you get to one sentence too many. And this whole speech, one sentence too many right at the end. You didn't have to include the end of it and we would have been like, points, what a great husband. Oh no, never mind. Cross it out. Now, as he says this, off stage, we can actually hear Myrene talking to Lysistrata, and she's saying to her, like, I love my husband, I really love my husband, but do not make me go out there and talk to him. Lysistrata keeps replying, like, you have to go out there and talk to him. What do you mean? Go out there. Go and do your thing. And Myrene is saying, I can't go out there because even though I love him and he loves me, he doesn't just want to talk to me. He wants me, and I don't know if I can keep myself together. But because they're getting louder and louder as they're having this like little debate between the two of them, Kinesius hears this and he shouts off stage. He's like, hey, get out here, woman. It's not an exact quote, but it might as well be. And Myrene, from the side of the stage, from the wings of the stage, you hear her go, no! But she's pushed onto the stage by Lysistrata. And in response to her showing up, the husband gets the baby off of the slave and just like holds the baby between them, and he says, call out for mummy, don't you want to see mummy? Isn't this great? Yes, he is using his child. The man is using his infant child to get his wife to close the distance between them. And the worst part is that the baby does it, but Myrene is too smart for this, right? She kind of looks at her husband, she doesn't respond because she knows exactly what he's trying to do. And the husband is like, don't you feel bad for your son? Like he's trying to call for you. He wants a hug from his mummy. And Myrene replies, yeah, I do feel bad for our son because his dad clearly doesn't take good enough care of him. I can't. And obviously the husband doesn't have anything to say in response to this aside from, woman, get down here and see your son. And Myrene is like, fine, no. So she really like struggling with every ounce of self-control goes to take the baby from the husband. However, before she can reach out to the baby, Kinesius does hand the baby back to the slave, right? Because like I said, he's got one mission. That's all he wants. And so he hands the baby back to the slave, and sort of as an aside, like not really to anybody, he says, she seems younger than I remember her. She's so much hotter than I remember her being, and her just being a bit of a bitch to me then, makes me want her even more. You guys, men are funny creatures. Even though the husband did hand off the baby to the slave, Myrene goes straight over, like doesn't even look at her husband, goes straight over to the baby to take her son from the slave. She's cuddling the baby and she says, oh, you have such a lousy dad, give mommy a kiss. And there's like this cute little like cuddling moment until her husband literally just lays a hand on her shoulder. That's it. That's all he does. He just comes up behind her, he lays his hand on her shoulder, and she flinches. She's like, do not touch me. And so he tries to verbally make her want to come home and to abandon this crazy thing that she's doing, right? He's, again, man with a plan. So he starts saying things like that the house is a mess, and she makes it really clean, and she knows how to like run the household and all of this. And she's like, well, the mess isn't bothering me up here. So that's a pretty shit argument. But there's a longer back and forth between the two until Myrene says that she will give in so long as he promises to open up to start the peace negotiations for this war. And Kinesius in reply says, if that's what it's gonna take, I will make it happen. And this is another thing that my dad said to me. My dad growing up was always like, men will say anything to get you to do what they want. And this is that classic scene. My dad watches these videos, so hey, I listened to you when it came to that. And Myrene says to him that it's great that he agrees that he will open up these peace negotiations, but until everything is solidified, she must remain on the Acropolis. Now, our boy, Kinesius, he turns it up a notch. Okay, he's had enough of this chit-chat. The man wants what he wants. And so he says that's fine. You can stay on the Acropolis, but since I'm here, can you just do one little favor for me? Can we just lie down together? Just innocently, we'll just lie down. Nothing else will happen. As we can expect, Myrene says absolutely not. And in particular, the reason why I'm not going to do this is because our son is here. To which Kinesius Kinesius just turns to the slave and he's like, leave, go home. And so the baby and the slave just exit the stage and Kinesius is like, problem solved. So Marini has to come up with a different reason as to why she can't lie down with her husband, because he quite literally says, if the problem is solved, now we can lie down together. And she's like, I can't because I need to be pure to go back onto the Acropolis. This is a religious note, like a contextual, contextual even, religious note. So she says that she can't do that. And he's like, I've also solved yet another problem. There is a spring not far from here. So we can lie down together. And then you can go and wash off in the spring. Look at me, such a smart man. To which Myrene replies, I've sworn an oath that I am not going to do anything with you until the peace negotiations are done. Do you want me to go back on my oath? My word is everything. And her husband is like, don't worry about the oath. I will take the consequences. Just lie down with me already. And Myrene, because she realizes that she can't say anything else, she's like, okay, fine. However, she is a clever lady as well. We love Myrene. This is a Myrene fan club, a Myrene safe space on this channel, because she agrees to lie down with her husband. And when she walks over to him, she then is like, oh, well, I can't lie down on the ground. Super uncomfortable. Let me go get us a cot. So she goes off. There's like a grotto. She goes off into the grotto and comes back with a cot. So she pulls out the cot and he gets onto the cot and he's like, okay, come on, lie down with me. And she's like, oh, I can't. That's so uncomfortable. I should get a mattress. And so she walks back to the grotto to get a mattress. Kinesius is frustrated as hell. She comes back with the mattress, puts that on. This continues to, she's going to go get pillows. She's going to get a blanket. Like, literally, she is stalling as much as she possibly can to not lie down with this man. Eventually, though, she runs out of things to go and get. And her husband is like, okay, now you can lie down with me. To which Myrene is like, for sure, but let me get comfortable. So her husband turns away from where she is because she kind of like, you know, makes motion that she's going to like undress or something. And he's really excited. So he like turns around for literally like a brief second. And when Myrene sees that, she runs. She books it off stage and runs back onto the Acropolis. So when her husband turns around, he's like, are you serious? Like, what? This isn't the exact ancient Greek, but essentially what the ancient Greek translates to is him saying that he is shocked that his wife left him blue-balled like that. How could she? This causes both semi-choruses to come back on stage from where they're sitting, and essentially the men are backing up Kinesius in this, and the women come on to support Myrene. And as this back and forth is happening, we then have this interrupted by a Spartan herald. So he enters, and we have this beautiful like bonding scene between the two men. The Spartan herald comes on and he looks at Kinesius and he says, you know, where is the council meeting? Where can I go to find the officials of Athens? I have news from Sparta. And Kinesius is like, well, you know, you're at the Acropolis, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, that aside, be honest with me. How is everyone faring in Sparta? Now, the way that the herald is dressed is he's got this big cloak on. And so there is something protruding from the cloak. So when this question is asked, the herald pulls back the cloak. He reveals his own massive prosthetic phallus. And he's like, it's not great, my friend. All of us look like this. He tells us that it's Lampito who's leading the women down there, and she has all the women dressed in like their sauciest outfits, like walking around. So they are crazy distracting to the men, essentially. And the herald tells us that it's just shit. And and obviously, Kinesius is like, it's also shit too. And so they decide to divide and conquer, right? They decide that they are going to speak to their respective sides and beg them to make the peace negotiations happen so that all of them could just return to normal life. So the herald leaves the way that he came, and Kinesius leaves on the other side of the stage. The next choral moment, which is happening now, again, I'm not giving you too much detail about the choral moments because, again, you can read all of those in the text if you so need them. But this one sees them reconciling. So the two semi-choruses, they literally end up coupling up, and they have like kissing moments, and then they become one chorus. And after this, the Spartan ambassador shows up, and he shows up with a couple of other people. All of them have big cloaks with conspicuous bulges. The chorus asks the Spartan ambassadors as well as their, like they have a couple of slaves with them as well. So the chorus asks all of them how things are going. And this is when we have this grand reveal of all of them with their cloaks. And they're like, not well, not well. And they state that they are here to make negotiations for peace. Now, as they say this, from the other side of the stage, we have the Athenian ambassadors show up and they have sort of the same kind of reveal moment, but they say that they are there specifically to talk to Lysistrata because she is the middle man, right? For lack of a better phrase. Lysistrata must have been listening, and the chorus literally say this because she then emerges from the Acropolis and the chorus invite her to basically say her piece, to explain what she wanted to do, what the grand plan is, like I've kind of been saying, like all of this kind of stuff. The men want to hear it, so the chorus ask if she can start talking. And before she does, she says that she can't begin until reconciliation is on stage. Now, reconciliation is actually the name of a young naked woman who ends up walking out and is just like literally just there to stand next to Lysistrata so that the men are distracted by her. So then literally Lysistrata knows that she has their attention and they can remember why they're all standing there because this young, hot, naked woman is there. And actually the first thing that she has reconciliation, this young woman, do is walk over to the Spartans because she's like, oh, everybody needs to get closer to hear me. So she has reconciliation go over to the Spartans and try to take one of the Spartan ambassador's hands. And the Spartan ambassador will not touch her. It's like, absolutely not. But Lysistrata will not take this as an answer because we know she's a boss bitch. So she tells the young naked woman that if this man will not be led by his hand, then she will have to lead him by his giant erect prosthetic phallus, right? That's the only other option to Lysistrata. And that makes the men straighten up. And so the Spartan like unwillingly puts out his hand and she leads him to one side of Lysistrata and the Athenians are led to the other. So now we have a smaller triangle conversation that's about to happen. So Lysistrata opens and she basically begins by saying that she doesn't understand why the war is happening anyways, because the Spartans and the Athenians have enough foreign enemies that they should be fighting together, and they should be doing that instead of fighting one another. And when the Spartans and Athenians kind of agree with this, she turns and one by one she talks to each side to basically say, how can you treat the other side like this when here are all of these great stories of what you've done for one another, right? Like the times where Athens and Sparta during the Persian War, for example, so this would have made sense to the audience, that they have banded together, they have fought together, and they have been really successful. And they've treated each other really well within the context in these times. They've done rescue missions for one another, they've supported them, they've ensured success. And so she speaks to each of them and is like, is this how you're thanking the other side by now fighting against them? That doesn't make any sense. Lysistrata has some fabulous points during this. And I do just want to make a note that the entire time, the men are just staring at the naked lady. And eventually they come up with enough of a peace negotiation that they can essentially go inside and like sign on the dotted line, right? For lack of a better phrase. And so Lysistrata leads the Spartan ambassadors as well as the Athenian ambassadors and the naked lady reconciliation into the Acropolis so that they can go off and do this deal. And when they do that, the Spartan slaves sit outside along with a doorkeeper, just somebody to watch the door. And as that happens, we then have the chorus who sing again for the end of the play, because we have now gotten to the point where everything has been settled. We basically signal the end by having a knocking coming from inside on the outside of the door, because the doorkeeper is like right outside the door. So there's a knocking from the inside. Eventually the door is pushed open. The doorkeeper is sort of flung across the stage. And we have everybody file out who is in this room. They are dressed with like garlands on them. It looks like they've had a drinking party, right? So everybody's happy and they are friends. The slaves are sent off stage. And this is then when we have a now mute, because the Lysistrata doesn't say anything else for the rest of the play. But she comes out and she sort of couples up all of the husbands with their wives and they all go off in pairs. Everyone is happy, they are singing, they're having a great time, and the chorus sing us off with a hymn to Athena. And that is the end of Aristophanes' Lysistrata. Now, just before I let you go, it is important to know that there are so many jokes in Lysistrata that we still don't really understand. So if you guys are reading the play and there are certain things, like maybe you're reading it online, I link all of the free links in the description below in case you guys don't want to buy the plays. But if you are maybe reading the more physical copy, you'll see in the back that most of these jokes, we're not really certain what they mean. There are lots of word plays we assume with sex positions. Again, we don't know. There are lots of things that are very lost to us still in time, unfortunately, but that doesn't make the overall premise of Lysistrata any less funny. And that is really a testament to just the insane crafting of Aristophanes that still to this day we can laugh, even though not every single joke makes sense. So I hope you guys enjoyed the Lysistrata. If you guys have not read it, you absolutely should. And it goes without saying, I will be seeing you next time with more Aristophanes here on the channel. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll be seeing you then.